Next, we hear from lesser-known Republican candidates ahead of next Tuesday's New Hampshire primary. Some of the topics covered include health care, opioids, and the impeachment. This event was held at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to turn this over to Josh McKelvin once again. Josh McKelvin.
Actually, before we get to me, I would like to have Secretary Gardner. Is he still here? Secretary Gardner, he had the opportunity to address the crowd that was here to hear from the lesser-known Democratic candidates. This is obviously the lesser-known Republican candidates, but that could change after this evening. But I certainly want to have everybody have the opportunity to hear from Secretary of State Bill Gardner. I thought you were headed this way, so, you want to say anything? I guess he's going to pass. Anyway, Secretary Gardner has been the longest-serving Secretary of State in the country, and vanguard of the New Hampshire primary. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you to St. A's for putting on this forum as well. Neil Levesque, Ann Kamen, everybody that's got a hand in this, very important. Let's get to the candidates, so start introducing them to come up on stage. We're going to start, though, with President Boddy. Number one, he's already on stage, and he hails from, excuse me for a second, sir, hails from Covington, Georgia. Let's introduce Robert Ardini from Long Island, New York, coming up next. Yep. Stephen Comley from Raleigh, Massachusetts, please. How are you, sir? Thank you very much. Zoltan Estan from Mill Valley, California. How are you, sir? Thank you very much. Come on, let's get some energy going. I know that this is the second of the debates, but Mary Maxwell, Concord, New Hampshire. Stacking the deck. How are you, ma'am? Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, we have William Murphy, also from New Hampshire, this town of Lyme. Thank you very much. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. Candidates, please take your seats. Quick introduction to the panelists, same as they were during the Democratic Forum. We have John DeStaso, a longtime political reporter in New Hampshire, currently with WMUR, well-respected journalist. Lucky to have him here, as we are to have Holly Raymer, who's been doing the same thing for more than two decades, I think 23 years now at the Associated Press. Very well-respected, interviewed myriad of candidates. Quick rules of the road, all right? We're going to start with the opening statements. Keep those around 2 minutes. We will cut you off if you go past that, but we have some time cues there from Katie, who has the signs. The questions themselves from the panelists, keep your answers around a minute, and any follow-ups will be my discretion as far as how we wrap that. So moving from right to left, the panel facing the audience. Let's start with Mr. Andini with your opening statement, sir.
Yeah, sure. It's Ardini.
Ardini,
yeah.
I apologize. My
okay,
fault.
No problem.
It is lesser known, candidate forum, so I do that on purpose.
Well, good evening, Manchester. I'd like to thank the college for this wonderful opportunity. My campaign slogan says it all. A moderate Republican, even a Democrat can like. So, please, think of me as fiscally conservative and socially moderate. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a former award-winning advertising executive from New York City, and in 2016, I ran for Congress in New York City's Congressional District 12, which also happened to be President Trump's district. Yes, the president and I live nearby. It's very difficult for a Republican to get elected to anything in New York City, but I did very well nonetheless, receiving 50,000 votes. It was such a great experience, I wrote a book about it, Running for Congress in Trump's Backyard. As a result of that race, I developed bipartisan solutions to the nation's most pressing problems, solutions which sometimes differ from the president's. Running for president is the best way I know how to shed light on those solutions. The national debt is my #1 issue. It's the greatest threat to our country because if we're ever attacked on the homeland, we might not be able to defend ourselves. Why? Because we just can't keep printing money. Every time we do, we devalue every existing dollar. And we can't keep borrowing from China and other countries because that puts us in a very compromised position. And then there are my special plans for healthcare, as well as my unique way of getting federal term limits passed once and for all. I hope to tell you about all of that and much more before the night is out. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Arditi, thank you very much for your opening statement. Let's go on down the line with President Body. Please, your opening statement.
Yes.
And that is your first name, sir, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. My beloved Americans, know this, that the Lord says that he loves us all, every American citizen in here today. He says that we need beatitudes, which is blessed attitudes. Change the way we treat each other and begin to love each other. You say, well, what qualifies me? I am already the President of the United States by the will of the living God. It's not my ambition. On January 28th, he said, run. And we'll get into that later. But I want you all to know that our United States Constitution says we the people, and I'm one of us, meaning I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to go hungry. I know what it's like to struggle to pay bills. But I also know what it's like to win against incredible odds, meaning I can relate to every American on the planet or in this continent. How about that? And the truth is, the first thing that God ordered me to do when I step into office is to unite Israel, listen, and America as one country. God said it's already done. Now, this will bring in increase and peace. Increase in what? The longevity of your life. Life expectancy will increase because love will have its way, meaning peace. There will be no more mass shootings under my administration. Last thing, the moment I step into office, listen, each of you will begin to receive your own United States Social Security Treasury bond that will hold its value at $1 million and pay you on a dividend based on what you earn, not taking wealth and giving it to the poor, none of that, but what you earn based on the stock market. 10% or 1% on a 90-day basis if you opt to do a year. That means you now can enjoy life for real. Elect President our body 2020. Watch God move.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Next opening statement coming from Stephen Conway, please.
Yes, most of you have the packet that I just handed out, and I want you to know a little bit about me. I'm a private investigator. I've been doing investigations in Washington for over 34 years, and no shortage of corruption there. I've also been investigating the media, which don't always tell you the truth about nuclear parts and nuclear plants. How am I different than Trump? And I will beat Trump if I can get your vote, because the press, especially in New Hampshire, they are not writing about me. And we'll see how much they're going to write tomorrow about me and how much is going to be on the cameras, because it hasn't been in the past, because I challenged Sununu, John Sununu. He used a secret document when he was chief of staff under Bush to license the Seabrook plant, and I can prove it. And I've already met with the FBI about it. I respect and support whistleblowers who bring me cover-ups of unsafe conditions in nuclear plants. Weld, he's also running for president. Former Mass U.S. attorney, was part of a 6-year failed witch hunt of Attorney General Thornburg, who charged me with conspiring to topple the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They wanted to find out who gave me the evidence about substandard parts still built in U.S. plants, including Seabrook. For years, these facts have been suppressed by politicians, the media, and companies who control elections and run America. A must-read. Who owns the media? Who owns Reddit? Who owns the AP? The media and nuclear holdings of Westinghouse and General Electric will shock you. And I have the pamphlet out front. I am the only... Eisenhower warned a huge military-industrial complex. The biggest threat to our climate is unsafe and leaking nuclear plants. Trump sells arms to create jobs along with threatening war. For years, war
10 seconds, sir.
Still is Washington's biggest business, enabling nuclear lobbyists to fill politicians' war chests. As your president, this will change when I select Colin Powell as my vice president. Together, we will make necessary cuts to the military and have America taking the lead in disarming nuclear warheads. We will bring our troops home and fix our infrastructure and create millions of safe jobs for our veterans. Clean, safe energy can and will be the future, applying sun, moon, water, and regeneration.
Just about out of time. I want to keep it fair for everybody. And moving down, thank you very much. You'll have an opportunity to make your case. Moving down the line, I know I botched your name a moment ago, so please correct that.
Sure. My name is Zoltan Jerko Istvan, and I'm running for president as a Republican. Some of you may know me as a transhumanist who writes a lot in major media. I write for the New York Times, other places like that. I come from Silicon Valley, and it may seem a little bit strange in New Hampshire or other parts of America, but we have these giant companies, you know, that are literally leading the world in terms of innovation, Apple, Google, whatnot. And they're doing things that are absolutely amazing, like putting implants in people's brains, doing machine interface. They're doing, taking disabled people and putting exoskeleton suits on them so they can walk. There's an entire industry, and these are now the largest companies in the world, that are pushing forth the human race. But there's a problem. In the last 5 years, China has started to catch up and actually surpass America in terms of technology. Now, America made its name in technology and being the leader in science. But if all of a sudden China starts catching up with us and takes over, like for example, China had the very first genetically edited babies, and they're also, at this point, I think, leading us in artificial intelligence, some of the biggest industries that are coming in the next 10 and 20 years, then America is going to fall to be second best and maybe even further. Now, I don't want that to happen. I especially don't want it to happen from China, which is an authoritarian nation. So one of the reasons I'm running as to become president is to try to bring back a balance to American innovation. We have a tendency in Silicon Valley right now to turn very left, to put on way too many regulations. We have a president in office who's cutting the National Institute of Health's budget. He's just not science-oriented, as most Republicans aren't. So I want to be a Republican, a new type of Republican that comes out there and says, wait a sec, it's science and technology that made America great. Let's embrace that again. Let's put money into the innovation. Let's send people to other planets. Let's do the space industry. Let's do genetic editing. Let's do all these other things that our conservative government right now is afraid to do.
Thank you very much, sir, for your opening statement. Appreciate that. On down the line, Ms. Maxwell.
Imagine me sitting next to a transhumanist. Ooh. Artificial intelligence is not for me. I'm pretty happy with the intelligence we have had for these last eons. I'm not into making any changes to humanity, but if they are to be made, I want to know who's making them, why, and can we talk about it to them. Seems to me such things as algorithms have just suddenly taken over. I don't remember anyone asking us if we wanted that to happen. Thank you for the invitation to come here today, and I return the invitation. You're welcome at my home in Concord, and please come visit me, where I will do my best to force you to sign up for the state rep job. Is Mr. Gardner still here? Mr. Gardner, are you here?
He's still present, ma'am, but you are on the clock, so.
18 years is the age, right? 18, you can become a candidate for state rep?
She's asking you, sir, if the state rep age is 18 years
18, okay.
to become a state rep. And I'm taking up her time now.
Or 25 for Congress.
All right.
So everybody in the room is eligible, and please join as soon as possible. Could our Constitution disappear? Yes, it certainly could, and it's going that way now. And today I heard Mr. Trump say that Nadler is a sleazebag and the other one, Schiff, is a con job. Sorry, not okay. Maybe they are those things, possibly. But it's not for the president to talk like that. Impeachment is a sacred process. And by the way, I think the Ukraine affair is small beer compared to other things that they get up to. But Mr. Trump should be saying, bring it on. Check me out. And also Mr. Biden should step forward and say, you falsely accuse me. Come on, investigate. Let's everybody find out what's happening.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate that. And final opening statement comes from Mr. Murphy, please.
Hi, my name's Bill Murphy, and I'd like to solicit your vote for President of the United States. I'm running for president because I can. I'm obviously 35 or more. I was born in the United States, and I've lived here in Hanover, New Hampshire, where I'm approaching my 60th year of teaching social studies. I'm running because I can in a state of New Hampshire where all I have to do is walk in the door, talk to a wonderful man, Bill Gardner, and plop down my $1,000. $1,000 is a lot of money for a school teacher. But if you really believe in your cause, then it is well spent. And that is my message to my students and to the students here in the room. If the cause is that important, it may take a little bit of sacrifice. I wake up some mornings and I am worried again about the news and what our president has done. I think character counts. And he has been dishonest, he has bullied, he has name-called, he has abused a woman, and this is not the role model for our country that I want. He has, in some way, disparaged just about every friend we have in the international community and cozied up with those people who he shouldn't be. So therefore, I think that we ought to have him replaced.
Mr. Murphy, we're just about, and I'm sure this will be a topic moving forward, but we got to get to our panelists now. Appreciate that. So let's start with Holly Raymer, and let's start with Mr. Murphy getting that first question. It is important to point out you are all running in the Republican primary field against an incumbent president, and I'm quite certain that there's probably going to be a topic related,
that leads
question related to that topic.
quite well into my first question. In some states, they're not even having a Republican primary because President Trump is seeking re-election. Obviously, that's not the case in New Hampshire, where our primaries are open, as you said, to people who meet the qualifications and have $1,000. But talk a little bit more about why challenge an incumbent president from your own party?
There are various questions or various comments. It's a complex thing. First of all, what is my own party? If you go back to when President Trump came and started running, the platform that he was running on was not the Republican Party. Therefore, I want you to take a look at the things that I stand for. I'm sorry, my students back in school would have said, you talk too much, Mr. Murphy, and be more concise. So you didn't get to the platform that I was running for. But I think that there is value to listen to the ideas that I present, and therefore it is worth going up against an incumbent president. Let's talk about these important ideas.
All right, let's jump around a little bit. Go to President Boddy for this question, or for the same question.
All right, thank you. First, I'm not here to challenge President Trump. I love him, and I respect him. I honor him because he's our president. I'm only running for president, right? Can you all hear me? Can I be heard?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. I'm only running for president because the Spirit of the living God has ordered me to do so on January 28, 2018. And when he said so, he said, call your bishop and get the blessing. Then I got the bishop, the blessing from my bishop, and then I called my wife, as God told me, and my wife asked me one question: what are you going to do about the Electoral College? God said, don't worry about the outcome. He said, we got the victory. We already won. I wrote President Trump, everyone.
30 seconds.
3 seconds?
30
Okay.
seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. I wrote President Trump. He wrote me back. I told him how much I loved him. He expressed love for me. I want you all to know that love is the key.
Thank you, President Boddy. Appreciate that. Mr. Comley, same question for you.
Mr. Trump, I signed up to run for president against Trump 3 days before he was signed in, because I knew what we were going to be in for. I think he ought to be impeached because he's obstructed justice, he's abused his power, and he's used the White House as dictatorship. He thinks he's running New York when he's in Washington. He's not. He doesn't have compassion for people. And he needs our prayers. And by the way, my campaign manager is the best one you could ever have, is Jesus Christ. And he wants me in the White House. and I can beat Trump. If you get my background out, the press gets my background out, every American will vote for me. But that's the problem. For Mr. Trump, he's out of control with nuclear power. He wants more plants built. Most of the plants are full of counterfeit substandard parts, and I can prove it. And that's the biggest threat against all the issues. Because we don't need a Chernobyl, we don't need a 3 Mile Island, and we don't need a Fukushima. We don't need another one. And we all need to get involved. If you help me, we'll turn Washington upside down, and I get the will, and I can do it.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Ardini, you pointed out the incumbent is almost a neighbor of yours. Why are you running against?
Sure. Is this a 3-minute that I have?
No, 1 minute.
Okay.
Now it's 55. No, go.
As I mentioned earlier, as a result of my congressional run, I developed bipartisan solutions to the nation's most pressing problems. And I want the opportunity to put myself in the best possible position to implement these. And many of my solutions differ from the president's. This is why I'm choosing to oppose him. Again, to be able to be in the best possible position to implement these bipartisan solutions to the nation's most pressing problems.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Sir, again, forgive me. Can I call you Zoltan?
You can call me Zoltan. Go ahead.
Please.
Look, I think it's my patriotic duty to run against Trump. I've been greatly disappointed, especially disappointed based on his premise of making America great. As I mentioned earlier in my speech, if you really want to make America great, you're going to have to bring back science and innovation and the STEM subjects to America. And that means really funding education. That means really worrying about the issue of automation, artificial intelligence taking all our jobs, which would probably eventually have to lead to some type of basic income. I have a basic income plan in my platform. But it's also this idea that what Trump's really doing to America is dividing us all. And that's the last thing that I can just stand for. I mean, I don't want to walk out and everybody hates one another. So I think we need a president that can get there and say, look, we're going down this path together. If we have adversaries, they're outside of the borders of America, but not inside.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And finally, Ms. Maxwell, same question.
Ms. Hawley, you said that some states have not allowed folks like us to do this. I know South Carolina and New Mexico, I think. First of all, that's very foolish, but I think it just shows the emotion of loyalty has really gone nuts in this whole thing, because when you see your enemy, you don't dare say to your colleague, it's not really that bad of an enemy. I mean, you have to, go to the other end, and that's crazy. But I am a Constitution maniac, and I have sued Mr. Trump in court for his violation of Article 1, Section 8, that is the War Powers Act, and at the moment I have a RICO case, that is a racketeering, you know what I mean, RICO case filed against the FBI for their misbehavior at the Marathon bombing situation.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Let's go back to the panel now. John DeStaso.
I think some of you may have touched on this, but I'd like to ask you to set your priorities with an open-ended question. What is the greatest security threat to the United States of America and its citizens? And this would go...
Mr. Conway, why don't you start that?
Mr. Conway.
Greatest threat.
What is the greatest security threat to the United States of America and its citizens? The greatest security threat.
Security threat?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
More nuclear weapons. America has got to take the lead in starting to disarm nuclear warheads. This is crazy what's going on. We ought to go back to the bow and arrows. That's what we need to go back to. I mean, everybody's competing for the most nuclear weapons. Korea now, North Korea, Iran, the United States. Russia's got more than anyone, and the United States is second. We don't need another tragedy, a disaster in this country, and that's the biggest threat. Right. It's a threat to every single issue, but we need to get involved. I can't do it alone, and you need to make your voice heard. That's the most important and most powerful thing, is have your voice heard and stay involved in your government. Don't depend on the politicians in Washington who get paid through nuclear lobbyists, especially during the threat of war. You need to get involved, and I can help you do that.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Ardini, greatest security threat facing our nation.
Sure. Civilizations rise and civilizations fall. And when they fall, why do they usually fall? Because of money. because of the dollar. So, in terms of our greatest threat, it's our national debt. As I mentioned earlier, if we're attacked on the homeland, we may not be able to defend ourselves. So therefore, our national debt needs to be put in check, so it's no longer the threat it is, so that we can afford to defend ourselves if we're ever attacked on the homeland.
All right, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. I wish that we could have the opportunity for everyone to answer each question, but we're not going to have time for that, so we can get to as many questions as possible. So let's go back to our panel. Holly Raymer, and first question for President Boddy.
Explain what your doctrine would be in terms of sending U.S. troops into harm's way, and talk a little bit about the circumstances under which a president should get authorization from Congress before engaging in some kind of military conflict with other countries.
Okay, thank you. As far as sending our U.S. troops into harm's way, under my administration, that's not happening. The first thing I'm doing in terms of our military is we're establishing the United States Praise Force. Listen, that is the 7th branch of our United States military. And the same way we did it a long time ago, right, in the walls of Jericho, when you go through the Word of God, God always sends the praises first. And I'm a praise warrior. I'm a spiritual leader. And I'm already the president of the United States. And yea, the Lord shall say, the moment I walk in office, there will be no more evil occurrences and or adversaries. I know this may be hard for some of y'all to believe, but trust and believe it's true. I am Dawson, a son of David. I'm not one of these politicians. Now, ask yourself about what you, the congressional war resolutions and so forth.
15 seconds, sir.
I believe in upholding the Constitution of the United States, listen, to the letter, all right? And there you have it.
And candidates, I know it doesn't feel like, but the mic is picking you up, so just find that sweet spot when you're speaking into it. Same question for you, Mr. Murphy at the end. What warrants boots on the ground?
I'm generally concerned, not only for this, but in general with the growth of the imperial presidency. I think that what has happened in the United States is we have moved into the administration where they govern by resolution and by edict. I think that we are overlooking the important role of Congress. And as president, I will carry out the laws of the Congress so that they will have a greater say in what is going. That is my job. And to follow along, I don't necessarily say a praise, but I'm in favor of a peace academy to promote understanding within the world.
Ms. Maxwell?
I think you may know that in 2007, General Wesley Clark went on the show called, it's Amy Goodman's show, and he said he had seen a memo in 2001 that predicted that the U.S. was going to knock down 7 countries, and I think it was Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, Syria, whatever, and finishing off with Iran. So someone had a plan. So it isn't as if somebody got into harm's way. These wars were organized. And the Wild Powers Act of 1973, I suppose it's okay. Your question was, can the president act in an emergency? But wouldn't it be foolish to send nuclear weapons anywhere, nuclear missiles, sorry. Isn't that a foolish thing? That's all I have.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And Mr. Zoltan, and then we'll go back to the panel.
Real quickly, I just want to go back to the biggest threat that America and the world faces, and no one had a chance to mention this, but in my opinion, it's clearly artificial intelligence. We're about 5 to maybe 15 years away from creating an intelligence that's smarter than us and could quickly become far smarter than us. So those things could control nuclear weapons, they could decide to turn off all the power, they could stop the internet. I mean, this Terminator scenario is actually very real, and this also relates to our military. So artificial intelligence is definitely my biggest worry, and I think I voiced the opinion of Silicon Valley and a lot of engineers around the world. But it also voiced the opinion of, as a libertarian-minded person, I don't believe in a lot of the foreign intervention that's going on. I would like to dramatically reduce the military, and instead of a military-industrial complex, I would like to create a science-industrial complex in America. I think companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin can make just as much money dealing with curing things like cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's and entering into the transhumanist age where we might be upgrading our bodies than spending it on bombs and wars. I mean, why don't we fight a war against cancer and heart disease and things like that? That's what I would like to do with the money that we're spending on our military right now.
Thank you, sir. Let's go back to the panel. First question directed to Mr. Ardini. And that would be Mr. DeStaso, John DeStaso.
Thank you, Josh. Let's go back to Trump for a minute, and we'll go back to what we see in Washington every day. It seems like it's divided along party lines down there in terms of whether this president should be able to finish out his term or should be removed from office, or whether the people should be able to decide his fate in November. And down there, it's pretty much divided, you know, Republicans on one side, Democrats on another. But how do you feel about this? Should Trump be removed from office next week, or should the American people get to decide his fate in November?
Great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, we need witnesses. For this reason, two wrongs don't make a right. So whether the House produced this impeachment from a partisan stance or not, it doesn't matter. It's now in the Senate. And we need to have a fair trial, and in order to do that, we need witnesses. Moving along, I don't feel the president should be impeached. And again, this is simply my opinion, and I reserve judgment to change my mind after I hear witnesses, if indeed we have witnesses. But the reason I don't believe he should be removed is when it all comes down to it, what are we talking about? Intent. If President Trump, if we can prove that it was his intention to get the goods on Biden, then of course he'd be deserved to be impeached. But we can't prove that. We can't prove intent. Donald Trump may not even know his own intent as to why he took the actions that he did. So we have to give the man the benefit of the doubt. We may think he's guilty. We may have evidence, but it's circumstantial. And
All right.
a person really should not be punished or sanctioned based on circumstantial evidence.
Thanks,
we
sir.
need to
Appreciate
give
it.
the man the benefit of the doubt.
All right, Mr. Conley, you're a professional investigator. I'm interested in hearing your answer to this question. Given, is it due process, or have you heard enough?
If we're going to have the impeachable policy, then he has to be impeached. Because either that or eliminate it and not have that. But I think you do need it in case you get somebody in America that's dictating. And he obstructed justice. He wouldn't work with Congress. He won't bring in witnesses. He's telling some of his own staff that they can't testify. That wouldn't happen in open court. You wouldn't allow him. He needs to be impeached. And I need to get in there and take his place. He knows me, by the way, and he knows me very well. And if you look up my website, you'll see videos of Trump and I together. When I gave him the evidence about the counterfeit substandard parts, you know what he did? He agreed with me. What's he done with it? He's ignored it. And every day that he ignores what I gave him, he's jeopardizing the safety of the American people and your families. Just don't think that you can't have a nuclear disaster in this country. 3 Mile Island was covered up, and I got the proof of it.
All right, thank you very much, sir. President Body.
He needs to be impeached.
Thank you.
Without any question whatsoever. Either that or eliminate the impeachment
All right.
process.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Body.
let me tell you what the real truth is. I want to get back to something y'all say, right? What is the greatest threat? Let me get that. Deception and delusions and illusions. The American people are being deceived every day in a way that you all have no idea is sorcery. And the book of Revelation, chapter 18, speaks about this sorcery. And the sorcery is pharmaceutically being done through chemicals, not only in foods and stuff that we eat, but also in the very airwaves that we're taking in. We're being bombarded with sound waves that are not God, that are keeping us agitated and aggravated and believing things and hating people. How can you mention my father, whose name is Yeshua, Jesus, and talk about hurting somebody? I dare you to stop one stone, cast the first stone. Now, if you ask me about anything relating to our nation, I'm going to tell y'all what we need: love. And let me tell y'all something. Everybody on the stage is campaigning, except for me. I'm cam-joying, because it's time for joy. And the joy of the Lord is my strength. What about you? See, what you're looking at is God's elected president of the United States of America. You will celebrate with me. We all got the victory. Now, as far as Donald Trump, the impeachment, let me tell y'all good people something. Article
10
3,
seconds, sir.
Article 3 says, if you give aid to a foreign enemy, then you're committing treason. Now chew on that.
10 seconds. All right, thank you very much. Let's go back to the panel. Question coming from Holly Raymer from Mr. Zoltan.
With all the mass shootings in recent years, schools, houses of worship, are there any restrictions on gun ownership that you would support, or would you go the other way and say that restrictions need to be lessened?
I'm excited that you asked me this because I have a policy that I've written about for a long time. I think first off, all the Democrats want to take away the guns. It's like there's 300 to 400 million guns in America, and half the people that have them are willing to use them if someone tried to take it away. I don't think that's a good idea whatsoever. But there is a way to stop terrorism, and there is a way to stop mass shootings, and it's very simple. We can use robots, drones, and microwave different sensors that put in every single public place, put in all different public schools, and anytime somebody walks in with a gun, let's say to a public school, or I have children in public school, it will send off a message and immediately send something to teachers and to police. The same thing can be happening like in the Super Bowl. In fact, in the Super Bowl, they already have these things. To give you a quick instance of what happened, after the Las Vegas shootings, many of the major hotels put in these microwave sensors. So now whenever you walk in with a rifle into a lobby of a major hotel in Las Vegas, it sends it out to the manager on duty so they can arrest that person or at least not let those weapons in. We can stop the damage of terrorism and mass shootings through technology, but we don't have to take away guns. It's a bipartisan solution.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Mr. Ardini?
Sure. In terms of gun control, my solution ties in with my health care plan. It's one component of my health care plan. Specifically, I think the government needs to incentivize insurance companies to, in turn, incentivize their subscribers to actually see a mental health professional once a year. This would be optional. Notice I'm not using the word mandate. Why? Because mentally sound people don't commit mass shootings. This is something we should all be able to agree on. Yes, the Republicans and the Democrats can't get together on gun control. We've been at it for years. But this is something we can do. Let's do this. Let's take a baby step, do this, and then who knows? We might be able to have a meeting of the minds about some other form of gun control down the line.
Mr. Murphy, live free or die. What do you tell your students when it comes to guns?
It is a matter of rights and responsibilities. Whenever we talk about rights, there is a responsibility that goes along with it. If you have that right, you also have the responsibility to make sure that that gun is not used for ill purposes. Therefore, you're responsible for locking it to do whatever's necessary to prevent its illegal use. And if it is, then you are an abettor of a crime. There is no reason for a semi-automatic weapon to be in a house. You want to shoot it? Go on down to the gun club and shoot as much. You bring that tank or that aircraft carrier that they wanted, but get it out of the home.
A lot of invocations of aircraft carriers tonight in these forums. Mr. Body, how do you deal with gun violence?
Well, praise God. God first. And one of the things that the Lord Jesus Christ blessed me to let you all know once again is that Americans, we need faith. Faith and trust the word of God that's coming through me. And let me tell you, my name is R19, as in Revelation chapter 19. That's my middle name. They wouldn't add the 19 on the ballot. So read Revelation chapter 19, verse 11, and understand who you're looking at, right? You all have been waiting on this day for a long time, and now it's here. So when you ask me about gun control, the Second Amendment is well-regulated militias. And the truth of the matter is, if you are a well-regulated militia, people skip over the word regulated. It has to be regulated. That's why I'm bringing in the citizens branch of the United States Praise Force. Anybody can join, but you have to be regulated. And if you got a gun outside of the regulation under my administration, you have to be subject to what? Military tribunal effects. Because I'm the commander and the chief. That means you got to deal with the military conspiracy if you do something like you ain't supposed to. You're going to have to deal with it.
UCMJ Code of Justice. All right, got you. Let's go back to the panel now. Next question coming from John DeStacio. How about Mary Maxwell taking the first one?
Okay, the president says the economy is in terrific condition. 3.6% unemployment rate. State of New Hampshire below 3%. On paper, you know, it looks good. Maybe in reality it's good. I'd like to get your view. The Democrats say no, that this is a misleading statistic, and the middle class and the lower class, or if you will, the lower income folks are not being reached by this economy. What is your the basis of your economic plan? Perhaps minimum wage, perhaps raising taxes, perhaps lowering taxes. Where do you go as president to try to reach and make the economic boom, if you will, reach everyone?
First, since you mentioned that we have to depend on statistics they give us, how do we believe this man on anything? Just like anyone in your own life, once they've lied to you, you doubt everything. I don't doubt that we have a tremendous debt. It's a joke, almost, our debt. The dollar is bound to collapse internationally. Then we're in great trouble. But really, I'm a biologist, and I see us as a species, and I see that every person just needs food, just like, other mammals. You just have to get food. And even 130 years ago, which is like yesterday, most Americans could get food from their own farm. But now you depend on a job. And that job allows someone to manipulate you in every way. And you were saying, would the minimum wage help? Well, certainly yes, because the extreme of the difference of equality now is and ever increasing. It's never improving. I mean, it's
10 seconds, ma'am.
Just one quick point. The Wall Street Journal reports that the federal deficit totaled $1 trillion over the 12 months that ended in December.
So why don't you pick it up from there, Mr. Sultan?
So many of you might know that I have a basic income plan. And, when Trump talks about immigration issues and building a wall because jobs are being lost, more jobs are being lost to technology than anything else. And everyone that's, any student that's in this college is going to have a really tough future because automation and robots are going to be taking all of them. So I believe, and I think there's plenty of other people that Republicans, Democrats, it's a bipartisan plan. We're going to need some kind of universal basic income that will pay people to have shelter, food, even if they can't find work. Now, my plan's a little bit different. It doesn't raise taxes. It uses federal land. 50% of the 11 most western states of the U.S. are empty federal land. We have as many mineral resources, for example, in the state of Nevada that we do in Afghanistan. So we could pool these mineral resources, monetize them, lease it to big business, and then pay every single one of you in this room $1,000 or $1,500. But we have a lot of resources to pay a basic income so that with the growing inequality that exists in America, we can solve the issues and we can solve the issues of poverty.
All right, Mr. Conley, what do you think of that? What's your solution?
Well, I've been an administrator for over 55 years, and I know how to get along with people and get my goals achieved. And I would design a fair, flat tax for everybody. And I'd cut, I've been an accounting major, and I'm a farmer, so I recognize pork when I see it. And you got to eliminate entitlement programs, some of them. And one way to create jobs.
I got to know which ones. What entitlement programs would you eliminate?
Pardon?
What entitlements would you eliminate?
Well, I got to look at them and go through them.
Copy that. All right, continue.
And,
Sorry.
and then you eliminate what you don't need. But there's one thing that's happening in this country, and that is the working person is getting killed. We got to control the amount of people that come in this country. Because if you don't, the working people have to pay the fair load. And I want to bring the soldiers back to fix our infrastructure.
10 seconds, sir.
Instead of having wars. So one of the solutions really is take the load off the working person. You know, when
10
people
seconds.
don't pay their fair tax, it's on the working person.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. What's your economic solution, Mr. Ardini?
Well, the current economy may appear to some as though it's healthy, but it's all smoke and mirrors. How can you say you have a healthy economy when you have a national debt and a budget deficit like we presently have now? Again, if we balance the budget once and for all, that's a baby step towards reducing the national debt. And if we do that, we're paying a lot less in interest, which gives the government more disposable income to return to its citizens that need it.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go back to the panel. Next question coming from Holly Raymer for Mr. Murphy. Let's start there.
I have a question about gender in politics. Your panel here has one woman and the rest male candidates. The same was for our previous panel earlier with the Democratic candidates. What do you make of that?
I'm worried about it. And I think that there are people out there, as we heard from the previous panel, that are working very hard in order to make that balance more appropriate. I think that you want the balance in Congress, you want the balance in life in general. At the danger of causing problems, in fact, I think there's more problems with the male. I think the privileged male is no longer privileged. And if the education system and our society doesn't come to terms with that, we are going to have more and more trouble within the domestic situation. We have got to get them talking to each other so that this is a true equal operation.
Ms. Maxwell, same question. What's the status of the glass ceiling in politics these days?
I have to admit, I didn't hear the question.
What's the status of the glass ceiling in politics, women in politics? Are things improving, getting worse, static?
I don't give a hoot.
All right, that's an answer. Go ahead, Mr. Zoltan, take it.
Well, I have a policy. In fact, if you want to find it more, you can look at my article in Vice. But for over 5 years, I've been supporting a policy where we need to give financial incentives to women to be in office. And that means even giving them money on the campaign trail so that they have an opportunity to rise up and take on, especially what I would consider a lot of privileged white men, which is really what's running government. And beyond even just gender issues, there's an issue of occupation. I mean, the government, Congress right now is made up of over 40% of attorneys. We should have plumbers, carpenters, doctors, nurses, scientists. We should have a wide array. I mean, after all, that much better represents the people. So there would be, in my plan, there would be financial incentives for both women to come up and also for different types of occupations so we could have a much more balanced Congress.
What do you think, Mr. Boddy? Are things getting better, whether it's women, minorities in general?
What do you think about it?
Mr. Boddy. Then we'll go to you, Mr. Conley.
If you don't mind, I'd like to take the moment to also answer that question that I didn't get a chance to answer. I think that's really important for all the voters here, right? When in terms of economic security, Franklin Delano Roosevelt introduced the Economic Security Act. I am revising it. It's called the Social Security Transparency Act. I want everybody here to know that if you have a Social Security number, that is an account number, and is linked to your private trust. It's been going on for many, many years. The only reason why we set up the Economic Security Act, because we didn't have the gold to pay off our debt. Understand? So under my administration, you all will begin to receive what's already yours.
30 seconds.
And what's yours is your piece of Wall Street, your piece of stock market. It's being traded on every time you pay your bills, every time you pay your credit card. Anyway, listen to me. Each American can now receive a dividend of over $10,000. No more pie in the sky, 1,500 crap. Y'all got to get what's yours, and that's why I'm here. Y'all need a real warrior. I'm a fighter. I might be, but let me tell you this. I may not have 20/20 vision.
Seconds.
I may not have 20/20 vision, but I have a vision for 2020. Elect President R19. Watch God move.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Mr. Conley, what's your economic plan or women in politics?
I think that we need more and more women in politics. We got enough ones that made a career in there. And as far as the politicians are concerned, you know, if you can't get your goals achieved within within 8 years, like Trump is expecting, you don't belong there. You need to get new blood in there, new strength. And women, I've worked with women. I've been in the healthcare field all my life, and I'm the only candidate that is. My family's been in the nursing home profession for over 80 years. We only have one home. It's family run and family owned. My son's the 4th generation. So women, yes, get in there and fight, because you need to break more of the glass ceiling.
All right, thank you, sir. We're running out of time, about 10 minutes to go here. Let's keep it going. John DeStaso.
Obamacare, health care, big debate on the Democratic side. Decade after Obamacare has been in effect, there are still millions of Americans without health care. Is health care a human right, like some on, mainly in the Democratic side say? And is it the government's responsibility? Should the government take over health care? Should the government fill the gaps? Where do you come down on health care?
We'll start with Mr. Ardini on that one.
Terrific. I love this question. I have a plan for health care, and it's simple. Rather than repeal and replace, that's what President Trump attempted. We all know that, and it didn't work. I believe in keeping the Affordable Care Act and fixing it with a few Republican tweaks. More specifically, I recommend only 3 tweaks. You heard part of one already, about incentivizing insurance companies to, in turn, incentivize their subscribers to see a mental health professional. Well, that would also apply to a personal care physician, because you control costs by catching diseases early on. Number 2, I would allow the uninsured to buy group health insurance through clubs or associations, eliminating the need for a public option or Medicare for all. And lastly, I'd remove state barriers once and for all in regard to buying health insurance. This will encourage competition and eventually lower premiums. And if you try and do just these 3 things, it's very likely, in my opinion, that it would pass both the House and the Senate, and we'll finally get some movement with health care.
Thank you, Mr. Ardini. Appreciate that. Ms. Maxwell, I assume that you give a hoot about health care. How do you fix it?
Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution lays out all the 18 things that Congress is allowed to, that the federal government can get involved in, and health is not one of them.
All right, then. Thank you very much. Mr. Conway, please, what's your solution to the health care issue?
Well, as I said, I'm the only candidate that's been in the healthcare profession all my life, and I know how to fix it without over-regulation. And believe me, it's over-regulated. We can start in lowering the cost. We can all take the responsibility of incorporating preventive health care by eating the right foods, exercising, promoting a good frame of mind. To come out and say you're going to get free health care, you're not going to get free health care. Somebody's paying for it. And you know, if Congress had done their job a long time ago, we wouldn't have 12 million illegal immigrants. If they held the first 10, we wouldn't have 12 million now. But Warren is saying, and so is Saunders, he's saying that they can develop free health care. Who's paying for the free health care? The working person. I mean, it's incredible. So don't think that you're going to get free health care, because somebody's paying for it. And nothing's free in America. Somebody's paying for it. Education, health care, whatever you want to say. Somebody's paying for it. And if somebody's getting it for free, the working person is carrying the load.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Let's, Mr. Zoltan, take the opportunity to talk about health care.
Well, healthcare is obviously very important, and one of the things that my presidency would do is usher in a basic income, a universal basic income, so a lot more people would be able to afford the healthcare that they needed. But so I'm married to a physician, and my sister-in-law is a physician. Many of my best friends are physicians. I can tell you they all answer the very same answer when I ask, what's the single biggest problem with healthcare? And they say, well, The lawyers have got so involved in the medical industry that everyone can sue everyone for everything, and it just raises prices again and again and again. So to solve healthcare, you actually have to have tort reform. You have to really change the legal system in America. I mean, we have more lawyers here than any other country in the world, just like we have more prisoners than any other country in the world. So to lower health costs, we really need to get lawyers out of a lot of our medicine. But of course, as a transhumanist, what I really would go for, so the #1 killer, of course, about 25% of people will eventually die from heart disease, is a heart attack, cardiovascular disease. A transhumanist like me would want to spend government money on overcoming the human biological heart by machine hearts. This may sound very radical, but there are many companies out there that are working on exactly this kind of thing. So this is a longer-term thinking for our health care of American citizens. Let's get rid of some of the bad parts of our body and start upgrading ourselves.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Body?
We, the government, we derive our power from you all, the governed. Let me say that again. We are the government, and we derive our power from you. That's what the Declaration of Independence said. Anybody ever thought about that, what that means? If we're getting our power from you, then we should value you. And guess where your power is at? Ready? Your signature. You produce the credit. Under my administration, you are the secured party credit. What do you mean, how are we going to pay for it? You're already paying for it. But guess what? We have been lying to you all for a long time, and now I am here, right? Meaning every time you write your social security number down, guess what they do? They send it to my treasury, and they send it back to you like you owe a bill. It's already paid. HJR 192. Hello, look it up. House Joint Resolution 192. All future obligations are hereby discharged, but that's private. Remember, this note is legal tender for all debts private and public. Under my administration, there's no more private and public. We are all Americans. You are free. So that means your health care provider can do a now tax program, which is what I have for you all. And that means your bills is automatically discharged against what? Your Social Security Treasury bond that I'm issuing to every American. Elect President R19 body. Watch God move.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Murphy, how do you, in 30 seconds or so, solve the health care issue in New Hampshire?
First of all, I'm not solving the health care issue. That's Congress's business. We have Bernie Sanders, we have Elizabeth Warren with these wonderful plans. I'm saying go back to the Senate, work it out, and I'm going to sign what you send to my desk.
Gotcha. All right, final question of the night. Everyone's got the opportunity to answer it, and it comes from Holly Raymer. So let's start at the, which way do we start this time? Last time? Oh, I don't know. Let's start with Mr. Murphy.
New Hampshire has had the nation's earliest presidential primary since 1920, so this is our centennial celebration year.
Yes.
We've faced a fair amount of criticism over the years as not being as representative of other states. Would you support changes in the nominating process?
Am I crazy sitting here advocating for a change? No, it's wonderful. It is, you sit and watch her. It is great for my class to be able to see these candidates. It is a great opportunity for the people of New Hampshire, but it's also a great opportunity for the people in the United States because, in fact, what they do is they get to see what happens when these candidates come person to person into your living room, into the restaurant down the street. They get scrutinized. You say, who are you going to vote for? You say, well, I don't know. I'm still finding out. And they go to meeting after meeting after meeting. Go New Hampshire.
Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Maxwell, New Hampshire primary.
The other night I went to a Republican Party meeting in Carroll County, and it was so good. It was so good. And they said, keep New Hampshire, New Hampshire. And they didn't mean anything about particularly this primary. I hope people in the room know what they meant. Keep New Hampshire, New Hampshire. So New Hampshire is special for the other 49 states. I think many of them know that. It's a historical thing. Again, not because of the primary, but come on, let's then do the primary there because it calls attention to New Hampshire. But anyway, keep New Hampshire, New Hampshire.
All right, we've heard from the two New Hampshire presidential candidates on their thoughts on the first in the nation primary. Mr. Zoltan.
Well, I have to agree to keep it the same. And I, come from California, and there was talk this last time around of trying to push California up even further than where it's been pushed. And I think that would be a disaster because California has so many electoral votes that whoever would win there in the respective parties would have such an advantage. And that might, in turn, drive the news cycles, Whereas you can actually, you know, lose here in New Hampshire and still win the thing. And that's what's great about New Hampshire, is it opens up the entire kind of game. It introduces the American public to what's going on, to all the names. I mean, right now they're listening, but it's when the voting starts happening that, you know, people start really paying attention, saying, oh, I'm going to be voting soon. So I would keep it exactly the same. I think there's too much historical precedence to change anything.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Mr. Conley, what do you think about our place in the process?
Well, first of all, I have to say that if it wasn't for a Secretary of the State, Mr. Gardner, I wouldn't be here. And Mr. Gardner has been a witness to some of the press that have written inaccurate stories about me, and also Bernie Sanders had his staff remove me from the filing when he was doing it in 2015. And Mr. Gardner is a witness to that, and that's being investigated. And I got papers in regards to that. But yes, keep it the same in New Hampshire. You know what it costs to get on the ballot and be nominated in Arkansas? You got to come up with $25,000. $25,000. And what do we tell our children? If you ever want to be president of the United States, either a woman or a man, you can do it in America. But they make the process very hard to either get in there or not. And Mr. Gardner, I have so much respect for that man. He is something else.
We're out of time.
He keeps the process going here because it's in his heart.
Mr. Conley, please give everybody else an opportunity. But that's 4 thumbs up in a row now for New Hampshire. President Boddy, what do you think?
Well, I just want to agree with Pops right here. Straight up, because I love Mr. Gardner when I first met him. I think he was beautiful. And the whole New Hampshire process, all the staff at the state, this is a blessing because you're taking a blind man. I was homeless, you know what I mean? And here I am running for president of the United States of America, right? I have a beautiful wife, and she supports me. My church home, the Grace of God, Prophetic Deliverance Ministry, everybody's happy that I'm even here. It's a blessing. So New Hampshire has been a blessing to me, and I just love it. And also, well, I still got a little bit of time. Remember, we the people, not we the party. It's not about a party. Nowhere in the Constitution did it ever say we can be Republicans or Democrat. The word Democrat is nowhere in the Constitution. Republican is only mentioned in 4.4, Article 4, Section 4, as a form
Almost
of
out
government.
of time, sir.
So that's it.
I'm afraid so. Finally, place in the process. I've yet to hear a presidential candidate ever, during a debate I've moderated, have a disparaging comment about our place in the process. You going to change that? No, exactly right. Yeah, so. Mr. Ardini, final word.
Leave it alone. I don't think the criticism is as widespread as you may think it is. I've only heard this maybe 2 or 3 times over the last 5 years. It's working. There's no reason to change it. And frankly, we have much bigger fish to fry.
All right, thank you very much. Let's hear it for the candidates, lesser known candidates, Republican candidates. And let's hear it for St. Anselm College, the Institute of Politics, and everybody who put this together. Thank you for joining us, folks.
Do we get a chance to summarize?
That was it.
No, that was the response to a specific question.
Thanks.
Well done. I know.
Water.
It seemed to me the other debate summarized. Didn't they summarize?
They did, but
We took care of 10
Oh, I'll get chewed out tomorrow.
Our Campaign 2020 coverage continues today.